Good morning, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Certification Advisory Committee to order at 9:15 a.m. We are going to do the roll call first with Mr. Duplanty.
Chair Peasley?
Here.
Okay. Vice Chair Cooperage?
Here remotely.
Member Farah?
Present remotely.
And Dr. Horn?
Present, thank you.
Member Janesh Pinnell?
Present.
Member Lynn Slata? I think she's absent as well. Dr. Lighting?
Present remotely.
Member Philpott?
Present.
Member Tybo? Member Weber?
You're present remotely.
And Dr. Webke?
Present remotely.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The item 1 is the Executive Director's report. So Deputy Director Duplanty, do you have a report, please?
Yes, Chair Peasley. I would like to introduce two new members. The seats were just filled in the last board meeting on April 22nd. And that is Angela Philpott, who's live in person. She's filling the secondary chair, and she's also representative of the AEA. And online today is Dr. Webke, formerly of the Arizona K-12 Center. So welcome.
Yes, welcome. Glad to have you both here.
And then my second part was just to kind of give an overview of where we're at. Historically, I wasn't even in this role, but last November, we kind of reactivated the CAC. We did a Certification 101, kind of got members kind of back into looking at certification rule, and kind of talked about at that time some cleanup to certification rules that were needed. In the certification department, we identified some things that were confusing to operationalize, things that were confusing to the field. And then as time has gone on with literacy endorsement being adopted, that literacy kind of coursework changing, as well as addition of certificates, lots of rule changes happened in 2017. There were some rules that were just needing a cleanup. There were technical issues here and there that were causing confusion to the field and also making it hard to operationalize at the department. And so we did that. We had that overview in November. Then we came back in February and we opened rulemaking on the elementary certificate and the early childhood certificate for some technical cleanups around literacy and some other cleanups as well. You passed that recommendation. The board opened that rule that is currently in public hearing. It's actually going to happen a little bit later today. There was a technical issue as well on Friday, so it's going to be today. The board received a 1 month update, and then they should be potentially closing that rule here at this board meeting and adopting that rule change. And so we're into the next kind of iteration of which Maura and I prepared, and now I get to hand that off to my replacement who's sitting beside me. We'll introduce in a minute, but we've got the next batch of rule cleanup, which is around endorsements. As you may recall, the endorsement rule is quite large. It has many endorsements, and some of that language is old. It just hasn't been looked at in quite some time. We've added many certificates. We've had testing changes and waiver changes. As well as operationally, it's some of the language is a little confusing. And so the plan today is to start that work. And I know I've reached out to you and kind of gotten feedback on the schedule for the next several months, all the way through November. And that is just our attempt at trying to calendar this out so that we can look at all of the endorsement language. And if we're going to ask the board to open rule, that the board could open rule on the whole endorsement section, and we'll stack all of the changes together. And so the plan is any recommendations you make today for opening rule will hold and stack together. And then hopefully maybe if the calendar holds, possibly opening rule in December. And that way board can open rule once on the whole endorsement rule, go through the changes, public hearing, go through their process, and ultimately, hopefully, adopt that. So that's the plan. I'll talk a little bit more about the calendar at the end. We were trying to get back in the cadence of once a month. Thank you for making today happen, half and half, virtual and live. Appreciate that. July is a little sketchy. I will kind of reach back out and confirm plans. So just knowing that July is a little bit, I don't know that I have quorum yet, but some folks that are out saying they might be on Zoom, I'll kind of attempt to get with those members and reach back out to you, but then definitely plan on August and September, October, and November as per the email that I sent you. And so that's my update and kind of where we're going for today.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, is it possible, could you send all the members a link to the rule section on endorsements? Also, because all of us that link for the certification rule, it's something I think just would be helpful. We don't publish the rules, get published copies of the rules anymore. There are so many changes. And so we just use the online, but I think that would be helpful if right now, since we're working on the endorsements, to give members a chance to take a look at all of them and understand why we're going to be working on this diligently through November.
Yeah, Chair Peasley, we can do that. It's the Secretary of State's site is not laid out quite the way the legislature is with statute, where you can look up by statute. It really is kind of one big file, but we could pull that down. It's a pretty big PDF, and see if we can trim it down a little bit and get you right into certification rules and send you that. We can do that.
Okay, maybe there's an index and a link to a site that would be helpful for us. Those of us that aren't that familiar with it. Thank you so much. Then item number 2 is the call to the public, and this is the time for the public to comment on items on or not on today's agenda. Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any written comments?
Chair Peasley, we have not received any comments.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 3 is the presentation and discussion on proposed changes and endorsement rules. Deputy Duplanty.
Thank you, Chair Peasley and members. So like the last meeting in February, our intention is to kind of give you an overview of all the changes that we're suggesting today and the rationale behind that in a PowerPoint. And then we'll follow that with considering each item as its own. And to help with that from the department is my replacement, who is formerly a director of recruitment and retention there, formerly a school principal for many, many years, a highly effective leader. And it's my privilege to be able to introduce and hand off the beginning of the presentation to Jamie Wilbert from the department.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. So we're going to start today with the certification endorsement proposals, and I believe the PowerPoint should be coming up for you. And this will look very familiar to you, as this is very similar to what was shown, I believe it was in February. And so Maura has assisted with this. And so, as you know, she's got great insight on things with going through and assisting with the rules and procedures and kind of looking at where do we need to make those changes, et cetera. So next slide, please. So looking at this, we'll be using the same key as we did before. So those changes that are highlighted in green will be those things that we're looking at for corrected errors, any removal of unnecessary verbiage, clarification pieces, and then changes in yellow will be those technical changes that we may need to discuss or highlight.
Just a point to clarify, members here, I don't have a printed copy of the PowerPoint for you. It's just being displayed for members virtually. If you get into Simbly, you can look at those documents. You can actually follow along either on the screen or flipping through the PowerPoint. When we get to looking at the rule language, attached to each item is a PDF of specifically the lined out version of the language, and I've provided that if you're present via paper. So
Thank you. No, that's good. All right, so we are going to go ahead and start with this first part here. So we'll be looking at R7-2-615A and B. So just the general overview. So defining endorsement, defining teaching certificate, and then also looking at indicating when a provisional endorsement may be reissued. So next slide, please. So again, same kind of format as before, looking at that rule proposal over on the left and then over on the right will be that rationale. So if you look at the first part here, what we are proposing in this section would be that in green, we're looking at that technical change to define the purpose of the endorsement and establish just the general rules there. So you'll see some strikeouts there in B. The endorsements are subject to the general certification provisions. You'll see that has being stricken, and then also you'll look down and you'll see that the following provisions apply to the sections down below, because we're also adding in there that reciprocity piece in that R7-2-621, and we'll refer to that a few times throughout this presentation. And then down below, we'll be looking at otherwise indicated a teaching certificate. So we're going to define that means a valid Arizona standard teaching certificate, classroom-based teaching certificate, or an international teaching certificate. So again, making sure that we are defining what that entails there. Okay, next slide.
So we'll kind of co-present on this. Remember that these are definitions that apply to the whole endorsement section. And so if it's text that's just underlined, that's an addition. If it's struck through, then that's removal. And then of course the underline is the addition. And so if we back up a slide in B, it looks like we're striking the language that says it's aligned to 607, but we're adding it as a sub-bullet so that we can include a little bit more and get that reciprocity piece in there. That wasn't part of the original endorsement language, but 2016, 2017-ish range, we added that as a result of legislation. And so it's just a kind of a cleanup. And then we're suggesting adding bullet 2 and now bullet 3, which we'll talk about in a minute, because teaching certificate isn't really defined. It's kind of sparsely defined throughout the endorsement language. And of course, the notion of teaching certificate, now we have added subject matter expert, STEM, classroom-based certificates. I mean, we've added more since this language was created. And so just operationally, it's helpful if we define that term.
Thank you. And we'll be talking a little bit more about specifically adding in additional teaching certificates throughout. So you'll see that a little bit later on, such as the early childhood certificate and middle grades. You'll see that being added in as we progress through the presentation. So we're also looking at adding in number 3, and this clarifies the provisional endorsement when it can be reissued. So you'll see here that the provisional endorsements are valid for 3 years and shall not be renewed or extended. And then also, in addition to this, an individual shall not be issued the same provisional endorsement more than once in a 5-year time frame. So you'll see over again on the right side that rationale for this. Looking at this would prevent an educator from continuously reapplying for that provisional endorsement without actually completing the full endorsement. So that's what we're looking for them, is to complete that full endorsement instead of just continually reapplying for that provisional piece.
So we believe the intent originally was that provisional was the entry point, and it gave you 3 years to finish the requirements and then obtain the full. And so practically speaking, the department has kind of weighed in on used the renewal rule back when renewals were 6 years. And so they kind of used that to help guide when somebody let a provisional lapse that fell off and they never converted it to full, and then they wanted to come back and get the provisional again. They kind of just operationally, there was no language that defined what we should do. And so they used the renewal rule and kind of the practices around renewal. But now renewals are 12 years in most cases. And so that kind of no longer fits. They can't just say you need to sit a year out before you get another provisional. And so the suggestion here is to kind of use the alternative teaching model, which is the alternative teaching certificate you can get for 2 years and you can extend a couple times with progress. But that rule is very specific that you can only get an alternative teaching once every 5 years. So if somebody came in, got an alt teaching, and then life happened, left the job, left the program, they have to wait until, I mean, that's just in that rule. And so we're just trying to get some consistency with, what do we want to do? I think the intent was provisional was foot in the door. You're halfway there in a lot of cases, finish it up, get some experience while you're doing that, and then get the full. So this language suggests how we would operationalize that, so they would have to sit out 2 years if they did nothing before re-getting the provisional. Are there any other questions on this kind of general section before we get on to the first? I mean, this is kind of the definition section. This is the overarching language, overall endorsements. And then the next thing that we're going to get into is an actual, one of the actual endorsements.
And committee members, this is the time for discussion. Member Kurpich, morning.
Hey, good morning, Chair Peasley. Thank you, Director Duplanty. I just had a quick question on can you give me an example of a provisional endorsement and what that looks like and what that means for an endorsement? I understand provisional certifications, but provisional endorsements, what would be an example of that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Chair Peasley and Member Cooperage and other members. So just point of clarity, in 2017, provisional certificates were outlawed. We no longer issue provisional elementary and that, like we go straight to standard or the others, but left over in the language was still provisional endorsements. And so I'm trying to flip to that part of the rule and get my readers on because apparently I'm blind now. And I know Maura's just chomping at the bit. She could answer this like nobody's business. So the provisional gifted, and if you could find one of those for me, give me the rule, that would be great. The provisional gifted had a subset of requirements. And so some time, a little bit of coursework, it varied by certain endorsements are allowed to be provisional. There's provisional gifted, there's provisional ESL. Yeah, provisional. Remember back in the day, provisional SEI is not a great example anymore, but let's go with the gifted. So the gifted, you can go a provisional endorsement and get your foot in the door. You have to have a standard certificate. You have to have a teaching certificate that can hold it, which is what we're clarifying. And then you need to have one of the following 6 semester hours of gifted or verification from a public school superintendent and director that you completed 90 clock hours of in-service training. That gets you to the provisional. If you have to get the full, you need verification that you've had 180 clock hours of in-service training and gifted education or 12 semester hours. And so you can see that it was like half to get yourself in the door on a gifted. And then if you got the more time or the more semester hours, you could go for the provisional. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. And that makes a lot of sense. So it would be the same for a reading specialist or gifted or SEI. Okay, that makes sense. Does it also allow you to get an endorsement if you're, let's say, a secondary teacher in science that wants to become a PE teacher? Is that considered part of that endorsement as well? That you have that 7-12 experience, but you would need to have an endorsement for PE, which would be some select classes and coursework to be able to get the endorsement on your certificate that says not only are you a 7-12 science teacher, but you're also have an endorsement to teach PE. Does that apply in this?
Chair Peasley, members, Member Cooperage, it depends on the endorsement.
Okay.
Some endorsements have provisional language and some do not.
Okay.
And we're about to get to the special subject areas, which include the PE endorsement, which it would expand a certificate, but I don't believe that one has provisional. You either have it or you don't.
Thank you, Director Duplanty, and thank you, Chair Peasley.
I do believe we've got the same thing in CTE, Dr. Corporation. Very common for people to come into the CTE realm without any teaching background and all, and they have 3 years to get caught up.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Matt.
to your point, Member Weber, the CTE certificates, that's built into the certificate, that they can have a subset of the requirements and there's allowable deficiencies. And again, it's very similar. It's a little different how it acts on a certificate, whereas endorsements are always attached to a certificate. It expands the certificate in some way. So I'll go back to this just to help, but you're right. I mean, it's a similar kind of concept. But endorsements attached to a certificate. They can either add, expand by content area and grade level. Another option is that they can represent some expertise. And the last little one that we have just expands the certificate by grade level, but doesn't define a content area. So let me give you examples of each of the three. So when we get to these, you'll know what I'm talking about. The special subject areas, which we're about to get to, those are K-12 endorsements in a specific content area like music, theater, art, physical education. And so that's actually what I hold. Back in the day, I have a secondary certificate that's 6 through 12 with the approved area of music. And so I can teach, legally, I can teach grades 6 through 12 in music, band, choir, guitar, keyboard, all that stuff. If I wanted to go teach 6th grade, that's not covered by, or 5th grade or 4th grade, that's not covered by my certificate. So I got the endorsement. I got in my ed prep program was the coursework for me to get the endorsement. I've added that to my certificate. And so now I already had the approved area of music, so I didn't really need that. But the K-12 lets me go down all the way to the kindergarten and teach music. Doesn't allow me to teach 1st grade general, but it allows me to teach 1st grade in music. And so that's an example of defines the content and expands the certificate. SEI is a great example of demonstrating some training and expertise. It doesn't expand the certificate. I know it says that it's I think pre-K-12 or K-12. It doesn't authorize somebody on a secondary certificate to teach 4th grade because SEI is not really a content. SEI is kind of a group of students are put into that or are to meet their needs, and you're demonstrating that you have the training, the structured English immersion training. And then that last one that I said was the old middle grades endorsement. And what that did is that expanded your certificate either down a grade. In my case, it would allow me to go down to 5th grade in my content area, or because it was middle grades 5 through 9. Or you could add that to an elementary certificate and bump your grade level up 1 grade and teach 9th grade. And so that's our 3 flavors of endorsements, but they don't stand alone. You can't just get an endorsement and have nothing else. You need to have an elementary, an early childhood, a secondary, and then we're going to add middle work, hopefully with your recommendation, going to be adding the middle grade certificate, which we added a couple of years ago, to be allowable to hold these endorsements. So a provisional endorsement is not really a deficiency per se. It's only a qualification for 3 years in whatever that endorsement that happens to allow provisional endorsements. And there's only a handful of those. Not all endorsements allow provisional. And we'll see that. And that's a great point, Member Peasy, of why I probably need to get the full rule in front of you so you can kind of see that. But we'll walk you through that on each endorsement.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Folks online? All right, thank you very much. Then let's go on to the next item.
Member Chair
I'm
Peasy,
sorry.
we're going to continue through the PowerPoint.
You're going to continue. Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next slide, thank you. So beautiful segue into the next portion. So we are going to dive into special subject endorsements. And this is R7-2-615D. And so we're going to be clarifying what a special subject endorsement authorizes the holder to teach. We're going to be talking a little bit about that early childhood and middle grades teaching certificates, which which Bruce just chatted about, and then also that technical update to align again with the R7-2-607, the general clarification on the provision. So next slide, please. So here is, oops, did I miss that one? Oh, next one, please. Thank you. So again, same format, looking at D, that special subject endorsements. We're going to just a few technical cleanups here. You'll see looking at, instead of area, we'll be looking at areas of art, computer science, dance, dramatic arts, music, physical education. Again, we just need to update that with the appropriately certified guidelines. You'll see that over there on the right-hand side. So those are the special subject endorsements that shall be issued in those areas. And then special subject endorsements, you'll see that we are striking out our optional. These authorize the holder to teach the subject area indicated in a single subject preschool through grade 12 classroom. So you'll see that we are striking out optional, and we're adding in that language again to update with the appropriate certified guidelines. You had your fingers crossed.
Yeah, just to kind of relate this, several years ago now, we proposed to the board the appropriately certified guidelines, which is a guidance document that stands alone that defines appropriate certification. And so we don't need to rely upon the rule to say that this is an optional endorsement. That guide does that, and that is board approved. And so instead, so we're kind of reframing number D2 to say this is one of the options to be considered appropriately certified, because there's other ways. You don't have to add the endorsement. Again, if I was just going to teach music in high school, I wouldn't need the endorsement at all because I have the approved area. It's just I added the optional endorsement so that I could also go teach primary grades.
Thank you. And then down below, you'll see in D3, we are looking at adding the early childhood as well as the middle grades there. So the current rule is inconsistent with what we currently have, because we've added early childhood and middle grades, those certificates since this was looked at. So we are proposing that we add those 2 additional certificates, and we're adding that word teaching certificate in there. Again, going back to where we were earlier, we want to make sure that we are restricting that endorsement to certificates that require that teacher preparation, that piece on there. So that is why that is in green there. You'll see that. And then that B, that we're not doing anything with that portion there. Moving on to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Thank you, Rico. On this one, the rule change proposal here on C is looking at C2, the passing score on the subject. You'll see that we're taking out area and exchanging that with knowledge portion of the Arizona Teacher Proficiency Assessment in the appropriate area. So again, this is the option to waive the subject knowledge exam with an out-of-state exam is already provided in that board rule of R7-2-607. And that is part of the general certification provisions. And then the other part of this one is we're striking out 3 on this one because again, that's already outlined in that R7-2-607. So there's not a need to have that in there because it's already outlined. Yeah, it's kind of redundant in there.
So are there
Anything else you
any
wanna add?
questions specifically on the special subject changes that are being recommended?
Just as a point for our newer members, that we have done a tremendous amount of work over the years to try to bring some consistency to the areas of certification and endorsements as it has come up. So this work that we're doing is actually bringing them all into alignment, because you'll see as we go through more, look at more, you'll see some of this language is already in a couple of them.
Right.
that
Yeah.
we've worked on in the past. So what I see is just bringing it up to where we have been and what the work that we've been doing fairly recently on those endorsements. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Chair Peasley, and members, like for instance, the number 3, adding the early childhood certificate. It's sort of a new certificate, but it's been around a while. But the rule as written allows the early childhood special education to hold endorsements, but without specifically calling out the early childhood certificate, we're really not authorized to add the endorsement to the early childhood certificate. And so it's just language cleanup because times have changed and this language is old.
All right, moving into the next portion. So this section is we're going to talk about the current mathematics endorsement. And you'll see on this one that we're going to propose some striking rules in effect before July 1 of 2011. So clearly looking at some things that we have not looked at in a while. Changing the title to Mathematics Specialist K-8, and then allowing applicants to use that secondary mathematics exam in addition to the middle grades mathematics exam to meet the subject knowledge coursework requirements. And we'll go into that just a little bit more. And then we have some other technical changes for you in this section. Next slide, please. Thank you. So lots of green, lots of stuff going on this slide, right? So in the left-hand side, we'll start with E. We are looking at recommending striking the outdated rules that were in effect before that June 30th, 2011, so that in E, in that mathematics specialist endorsement grades K through 8, again, taking this part out, and then looking at the new description here, mathematics specialist K-8 endorsement. And so what this does is this more accurately describes the purpose of this endorsement. And then also down on number 1, the mathematics specialist K-8 endorsement is optional, but it's also, we're adding in there that this is some technical changes to clarify the purpose of this endorsement. So you'll see here that we recommend it for an individual in the position of a mathematics specialist, mathematics education consultant, mathematics interventionist, mathematics coach. So you'll see that we've added those words in there, or the coach in a kindergarten through 8th grade setting. So some of the verbiage stays the same, but then just going back and clarifying a little bit more. So adding that mathematics specialist elevates this endorsement a little bit more in that more of that leadership piece, but also just provides a little bit more description from what is in the written verbiage for this particular endorsement.
So over the years, there's different requirements for this mathematics endorsement than there were for an approved area. And so folks thought if they got that mathematics endorsement that they were appropriately certified to teach mathematics. And even without the new language under F1 or the 1 on the bottom, you can see the purpose of this endorsement was not to teach mathematics. It was to indeed be the coach, the specialist, and support mathematics instruction. And it's a nuance, but this is kind of like that leadership role or a little leg up. And so just for, and in the appropriately certified document as well, this does not authorize you by itself to be teacher of record, appropriately certified teaching mathematics. And typically these folks would probably have some certificate that had the mathematics approved area. I mean, they just typically have that. And then this is this next piece. And so that's why, we had discussed this when I was at the department, and we continue to believe that just adding this to the title, one, clarifies it, and this is how we believe it's being used in the field as well. And then also elevates it, which speaks to that kind of the retention. So Jamie said it well. It elevates it. So when you have that in your certificate.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So looking at this section here under 2, again, we are looking at striking a piece from here, the Arizona Elementary or Special Education Certificate. And then you'll notice that we've again added that early childhood and middle grades, because again, previously those were not in effect. We have those now. So adding those pieces on, and then you'll see again, just correcting that inconsistency, making sure that that endorsement can be added to that early childhood special education, but not early childhood certificate. And then update to include the middle grades as well. And then down below on B, before it was just 3 years of full-time teaching experience, and now we're looking at making sure that those 3 years are verified. So verification of the 3 years of teaching experience. And then down on C and D, this is just an update. And it's just going to distinguish between the required mathematics coursework and the mathematics education coursework. So you'll see again, there just 18 semester hours of mathematics coursework. And then that bottom one is the 6 semester hours of mathematics education coursework.
And just before we go on, again, you'll get
Mhm.
another take at this. So this is the first kind of touch point in this meeting today, and you'll get to look at this language a little clearer outside of the PowerPoint. I wanted to highlight 2B, and it's one of those things, it's a nuance. But again, this language needs to operationalize it for the certification desk. And when it just says 3 years of full-time teaching, how does that direct and allow the department to verify it, right? And so somebody can just say, yeah, I taught out of state. We have no way of verifying that. So this just articulates, codifies that we have a process, and you get a verification form, and you have your LEA where you're having that, where you taught, verify it. And so it just codifies it. And so when that's deficient in an application, it supports what the department needs.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Lots of green on this one. So looking at this one, what we're looking at here for E is striking this one, and this was the passing score in the middle grades mathematics knowledge portion. Could be substituted for the 18 semester hours, and you'll see the rationale for this one. And so we're looking at the option to use the middle grades mathematics exam in lieu of the mathematics coursework, and it doesn't really belong in this section. It should be kind of its own new provision, and you'll see that down below. And so you'll see that for E, and then on F, we're looking at the striking the completion of a comparable valid mathematics specialist certificate or endorsement from another state may be substituted. And so you'll see that as well over on the side. The rationale for this one, the option to use an out-of-state certificate is addressed in R7-2-621. And that one we've talked a little bit about earlier today too, and that's the reciprocity. So absolutely, looking at that. What was that?
It's redundant.
Yeah, it is redundant. And then, so you'll see in 3, we've updated this. So the passing score in the middle grades mathematics or secondary mathematics portion of the Arizona Teacher Proficiency can be substituted for the mathematics coursework, but only in 2C. So not the 6 semester hours of mathematics education coursework. So not 2D, only the 2C. So where Mr. Duplanty was saying that you would get a chance to kind of go back and look at this again. If we flip back just one slide, please. Thank you. So we're looking at updating the corrected error, or we're looking to update to correct the error in that subsection to make sure that the rationale for the passing mathematics assessment is alluding to the correct portion here and creating its own section. Did I say that right?
Yeah, sort of.
I'm like, am I getting that right?
So the changes that you see as 2C and D here are just adding mathematics coursework and
Right.
mathematics education. It defines the stuff that follows. You'll see that if you look ahead at the document. We're not changing in the coursework requirements.
Right.
It always was content math coursework and pedagogical math coursework. It's just C and D are just articulating that. And you can go forward one slide, Rico. What these changes are doing is, one, reciprocity came in way after. Reciprocity was built into the certificate back in the day, or this endorsement back in the day, but then we had massive legislative reciprocity requirements. And so that's defined in 621. So we don't need the redundant language here. But what 3 does is it moves it to E23. And there's really no substantive change other than to get this endorsement, the certification had to look for the middle grades assessment. So if you came in with the secondary assessment, too bad, so sad. We need the middle grades. And so this just is now allowing somebody who has the full math test to also use it, which makes sense. I
Right.
think makes sense. Yes or no?
Well, it waives,
It did waive the requirements
it-
before.
yeah, so the test waives, yeah, it clarifies.
The
it a
18
little bit more.
semester hours was waived, but only with the middle grades math test. And now you
But
can
no-
waive the same, you can waive that with both.
Waives the 18 semester,
Yeah.
it clarifies it.
Yeah, it did before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I had my notes
Yes.
right. Thank you, Laura.
Any questions on this mathematics endorsement? This is probably the beefiest change.
Mhm.
And you'll get another stab at it as well when we go to the item.
Okay, we have a
No,
question.
there's no quiz.
No
There's
quiz.
no quiz on that one. No math
Question?
quiz.
Member Horn?
Thank you, Chairman Peasley and Director of Planning. So this endorsement now takes away the fact that if I'm an elementary teacher and I only want to teach math, I cannot do that with this endorsement. This endorsement is only for a leadership type position. Is that correct?
Chair Peasley, members, Member Horn, this endorsement didn't allow that. It doesn't allow that today.
Okay,
It doesn't allow it today. The appropriately certified document describes a multitude of ways of which you can be considered appropriately certified to teach math. And this endorsement didn't authorize that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, they can get approved areas. They can add an approved area to their certificate. But if they need to, right? At certain grade levels, they don't even need to have that. Yeah,
Are there any other questions?
there's online. Remember
I
typo?
just wanted to know if this would affect people that already hold the endorsement when the language changes. How does that affect people with
Sure, please.
whatever?
Chair Peasley, Member Tybo, it's my belief that there's actually very little impact other than the name change. The next time their certificate is printed, it would say mathematics specialist endorsement, but there's no additional requirements. There's nothing additional to maintain the endorsement at all.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. Back on section 1, where it lists out the positions, do we need to add some kind of a clarifier there in case a new leadership term is coined? But recommended for an individual in the position of mathematics specialist, mathematics education consultant, mathematics interventionist, or mathematics coach. Perhaps we'll have a mathematics leader. I don't know. These are newer terms over the last few years, several years.
Chair
Czar.
Peasley and members. So the rule change that's being recommended is just adding mathematics education in front of it. So the rule originally had specialist, consultant, interventionist, or coach. So all we're doing is adding mathematics education or mathematics in front of that. And then I know the department is in the midst, because I handed this off. Hopefully later this fall in one of these meetings, you'll see a teacher leader endorsement come forward as an optional endorsement, but would allow to elevate. And so, when we consider the reading specialist endorsements and the mathematics specialist endorsements, there's a nature of leadership, I think, built in. But yeah, if there's any ideas of other terms that would allude to that are not already here, we can entertain that and come back with another draft.
I'm just looking to see if that's been thought of, and is there a recommendation, or this is sufficient to cover? which I'm fine with. I don't think we need to, less is more. But on the other hand, this seems to be rather specific. And I think the mathematics consultant is quite broad.
Yeah.
So I might have answered my own question. Thank you.
Chair Pisa, the only other thing that we were just chatting about would be after mathematics interventionist, mathematics coach, or similar position.
That could work. That would be fine. And I'm just thinking of that in terms of all of the work that we have done over the past 18 years. Terms come back. And Maura, you've been there with us all along too. So we've just seen that. And I just wonder if that might not be more helpful to the desk when people are coming, especially from out of state. They have some departments that are more creative.
Chair Peasley, I think this is, we could let that maybe stew for a little bit. And when we get to the item where you're going to be asked to consider the recommendation, that might be an opportunity to either add that, or if you'd like to, table that at that point and send back to staff to have another look at it and bring it back in another meeting, we can do that. But that item is your opportunity to do that is coming up.
And that's why we're going through this as we are, because what we were hoping is that we could have all of this discussion during the presentation and minimize the amount of time once we start actually looking for motions. Thank you.
And so we'll transition to the last one. I know it's a lot. We won't build, we can build the agenda a little differently next time to have a piece, consider the item, have a piece, consider the item. We thought this was still small enough to do it one big, but I see eyes. This is technical. I get it. So if Rico, if you go one more slide forward, Jamie will kick off the elementary foreign language.
All right, thank you. Okay, so last section. This one is R7-2-615I. This is the elementary foreign language endorsement. And so in this section, we'll be looking at changing the title to elementary world language K-8 endorsement, updating those prerequisite certificates, and then aligning that language proficiency requirement to the approved area. And so go ahead and hit the next slide, please. Thank you. So in looking at this one, one of the biggest pieces here is updating from elementary foreign language to world language K-8. And so the use of the word foreign is not inclusive and accurate, since that endorsement may be issued in Native American languages, as well as the American Sign Language. And so you'll see that is that first one there for you. And then looking at the elementary foreign language, again, we're going to look at that technical change to update rule with appropriately certified guidelines. So looking at that one, again, previous, we looked at optional. This one authorizes that holder to teach a world language other than English to students in kindergarten through grade 8. So you'll see what we're looking at to be struck, and then that additional piece added in. And then as the previous ones, we've added early childhood and middle grades. We're also proposing the same thing here, those two certificates, adding those in, as well as the word teaching in front of the word certificate. Again, making sure that we're allowing teachers with this certificate to obtain this endorsement. Okay. And next slide, please. Lots of yellow on this slide. So before I gave you lots of green, this time I'm giving you lots of yellow here. For this one, looking at striking the first sentence up there, and that's that proficiency in speaking, reading, and writing a language other than English, verified by the appropriate language department of an accredited institution. American Indian language proficiency shall be verified by an official designated by the appropriate tribe. So we're looking at this one by adding in, by taking that out because this is aligning the foreign language proficiency verification options with the requirements for an approved area in that language. So really what we're doing is we are updating with the accepted exams of the approved areas. And so you'll see there that if the passing score on the subject knowledge portion is in the world language other than English, obviously we would take that. And then also looking there, if an Arizona subject knowledge assessment in the language has not been adopted by the board, then you'll see what could be accepted. So one of the following would be required. That minimum of the 24 semester hours of the courses in the world language other than English, the passing score on a nationally accredited test of a foreign language that would be approved by the board, or a verification of proficiency in a Native American language from a persons, or entity designated by an appropriate tribe. And then, yep, I saw your fingers crossed.
Yep. So I just wanted to clarify on this. It's a big change. It looks like a
Mhm.
big change. And so it's been a struggle for somebody to go back to an institution and get somebody there to verify that they're proficient in the language. And just, you got to picture not the new grad. So,
Mm.
you know, if I went back to NAU, I mean, I really wouldn't know anybody and nobody would really know me. And so they would be looking at what? Some other qualification, such as transcripts, right? Well, when we tie it to the exam, like we do in the approved area, you open up the subject knowledge exam rule, which allows a multitude of ways of meeting that, not just passing the exam. Degree, time teaching. And so all the ways that you can waive a subject knowledge exam would now apply to this. And so it looks more restrictive, but indeed it's not. It opens it up. Their only option under the old language was to get this verification from somebody. They could literally have the approved area and pass the exam, and they wouldn't meet the old requirement. And so again, I'm just pointing you to that, not by requiring the approved area, but requiring the exam comparable to the approved area, that opens up the menu of ways to waive a subject knowledge exam, which is degree, 3 years teaching, a relevant work experience that can be, and so there's many more options.
Thank you. And then finally on C, we're updating to use more inclusive language here. So where you'll see that we have 3 semester hours of courses in the methods of teaching a foreign language at the elementary level, we're taking out that word and we're adding second language instead. Questions?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Peasley. I just wanted to make sure in 2I, that leaving the word foreign there was intentional, and okay, just wanting to make sure, because I know you had mentioned American Sign Language as well as our indigenous languages here to Arizona. So as long as that was intentional and not an oversight, just confirming.
It's, yes, right, so the issue, there's a statute that refers to.
Ah.
And it's also your.
Go ahead.
So it's just.
So it's referred to in statute. And so that's why that one is specifically stated there, that it is referring to that. That's what's stated in statute there. And then there are specific ones that are addressed in statute for some of those passing scores for those nationally accredited ones. So,
it's
yes.
like purely
Yep.
technical.
Purely technical.
Yep.
More as we're translating from.
Yep. Thank you, Maura.
Thank you for that. I just,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair Peasley. and
Absolutely.
all of you for
Good catch.
clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that it was intentional.
Mhm.
Since you were so intentional about changing it everywhere else.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, Member Philpott, for catching that, because you're going to find as we go through these, we see these, what seemingly, what seems to be inconsistent is because of statute language. And it appears in a couple of certificates as we go along the
Yeah.
road.
And your good sanity check for us. I think Member Cooperage has a question.
Chair Peasley, Director Duplanty, I just had a question on B3, verification of proficiency in a Native American language from a person, persons, or entity designated by an appropriate tribe. Are tribal governments aware of this? Do they have someone that is designated to sign off on this? Because that's a pretty loose interpretation of appropriate tribe, whether it's a chapter or whether it's from the Dene Department of Education or the Navajo Nation or whoever it might be. Are they aware of who has the authorization to sign off on that endorsement?
So, Chair Peasley, Member Cooperage, in some cases, yes. And I'll let Jamie speak in a minute into how they might address this, but there is the native language certificate as well, which has the same role. It's the same kind of thing. And so we receive letters, or formerly I had received letters from a tribal designee that said this person was qualified in the language. And so this is aligned to that certificate. It's the similar language, and I'll let Jamie kind of speak to the rest.
So the other side to this too is there's usually a cultural educational department. And so that's typically where that that person, persons, or entity, that's where their designated person would be. Chair Peasley and Member Cooperage.
So certification would direct them to give them a form or give them something that would direct them where to go to get that signature, correct? Or that verification?
Correct. Okay,
And verification of proficiency in Native American language, and I speak to this just because I primarily work with Navajo population. I'm Dene Department of Education. I'm not sure how they would test that out and verify that. But I guess that's for them and the certificate holder to figure out. And just one more point of clarification. This would be for an elementary certified teacher that wants to add the endorsement on for a foreign language endorsement to teach a second language coursework, right?
Chair Peasley, Member Cooperage. So well, you'll see the full language later, or if you have that document in front of you for the last agenda item. We're suggesting that it actually can be put on any certificate, including not any certificate. Certificates listed in the Rule 2A, early childhood, and we're suggesting early childhood, middle grades already, elementary, secondary, or special education. And so this would, in some cases, defines the content and can expand the certificate.
Okay, and there, if I'm correct, you as a secondary teacher, you can get a certificate in a second language like Navajo language without having a full teaching certification, but that does not apply in this particular situation. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other members? Okay. Are we ready to proceed? All right, thank you. I kind of like this format because it puts us, for me, it put me in endorsement mode and being able to think about each of the sections and the lines and the consistencies, but that's just how my brain works. So, if you solicit feedback from the group, I think that would be helpful to you as we go. So then number 4 is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding proposed amendments to AACR 72615A and B relating to certification endorsements. Deputy Director Duplanty, please.
Thank you, Chair Peasley and members. This is, if you're online and in Simbly, you can pull up the PDF that just has the lined out or red line version, whatever we're calling that. If you're on the dais here, I've provided that as a document. And so you can see just the language there. Rico might also pull that up. Just to reiterate, because this was at the beginning of the presentation, that we're recommending some language, adding some language to 615A that helps define the purpose of endorsements, and adding some language to B, a little strike through, and adding language that that ties it to 607, ties all endorsements to 607 and reciprocity in 621. So you can see why we're removing these specifically from other ones down the road, is that this will just define it in the overarching definition here. And that B2, adding B2 to clarify what's basically currently in practice, and also B3, which is to clarify operationally around, again, coming back, not having gotten a full endorsement, letting the provisional go, it times out, and then what happens when they want to come back? And so now that's that would be the recommendation, is to codify that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, then do I have a motion to recommend the proposed changes to Board Rule R72, 615A and B relating to general rules for endorsements?
I so move.
So moved by member Janice Pennell.
I'll second.
Thank you. Seconded by member Horn. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Just for a point of order, Rico, how many are we still? How are we online? I can't see everybody online. Six online. Okay, and 3. I just want to make sure. I can't see everybody. So if and just as a reminder, when we vote, is to unmute and camera on, and we'll catch that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, then we'll go on to item number 5. It's the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding proposed amendments to AACR 72615D relating to certification special subject endorsements. Deputy Director Duplanty.
Thank you, Chair Peasley and members. Again, as you're looking over the document here, we're fixing a grammatical error, making areas plural, since it refers to more than one area. And in 2, again, we've adopted the appropriately certified guidance that's outside of this. This is one of the ways in which you could be considered appropriately certified. So it's already considered optional. And so we can remove that and instead highlight what it would authorize you to do. So clarification there. And then in 3, it's adding, specifically adding early childhood and middle grades being a new certificate, and early childhood not being allowed to get the certificate prior because it wasn't codified that way. And then under C is again addressing redundant language and reciprocity and tying it to the subject knowledge language a little bit more clearly.
Are there any other questions? Online? Okay, then, do I have a motion to recommend the proposed changes to Board Rule R72615D related to special subject endorsements?
So moved.
So moved by member Janice Pennell. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was seconded by
Linnea Lighting.
member Lighting. Thank you so much. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Any opposed? Okay, the member, motion carried. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding proposed amendments to AACR 72615E. Sorry, here we go. Item 6 is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding proposed amendments to AACR 72615E and F relating to certification mathematics endorsements. Deputy Director Duplanty.
Thank you, Chair Peasley and members. This is doing a lot. This is removing grandfather language that's currently contained in letter E. And F will actually move up, but we'll get that all the order right. But it's removing the grandfathering language. And then it is adding, it's changing the title by adding the specialist K-8, which aligns to the appropriately certified document and aligns to what was basically already in rule under number 1. But we do clarify number 1 by just being purposeful in our language there and keep labeling things as mathematics. And under 2, we're adding, we're clarifying that language, adding early childhood and middle grades like the others. B is we're clarifying operationally what folks need to do, which is to get their teaching time verified. C is just adding mathematics coursework to coursework that is mathematics coursework. D is labeling the coursework that's math pedagogy as math education coursework, being purposeful about that. E is removing redundant language. F is removing redundant language. We're removing E, but kind of formulating it as a 3 and allowing folks to use an additional test, being the secondary tests. Again, the middle grades mathematics and the secondary mathematics test would waive the content knowledge coursework as part of this endorsement, as it did before. We just didn't allow both tests.
Are there any questions? I had asked the question earlier if we needed a clarifier. And so I really truly just asked the question. I was not making any recommendations. I was not making any recommendations. So is there, are we good to go with the language as it is? And I'm asking the committee. Okay, if there aren't any other recommendations. And Deputy Director Duplanty, your team is good with the language as is too?
Yeah, Chair Peasley and members, I'm not aware of any calls from the field to add any other type of mathematics specialist descriptors in there. I think, again, the rule, although it calls out certain titles, that wouldn't preclude anybody from, adding some sort of leadership position that, synonymous kind of terms. I think that language is really there to help folks understand what the endorsement's about when they're applying for it. Why should I go for this? Why should I go a little bit above and beyond what I might already hold? And so, again, I don't think there's anything in a properly certified guidance document that if they called the mathematics specialist and gave them some other role that was related to mathematics leadership, there's no call out in appropriately certified guidance. It really doesn't. Appropriately certified guidance, I don't even believe really kind of gets into that, right? It's more of the notion of somebody might get this because it's the hiring practice might ask for somebody to have this to show expertise, or they get it to show expertise and highlight their strengths.
Thank you very much. Do I have a board motion to recommend the proposed changes to Board Rule R7 to 615 E and F relating to the mathematics K-8 endorsement? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Member Corporate, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Weber, Member Weber?
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. Is there any other further discussion? Then all those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Again, do I have to go back and repeat that?
For online.
Okay, how far back?
Just transition.
Okay, we're going to transition then to item number 7. Is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding proposed amendments to AACR 72615I relating to certification elementary foreign language endorsement. Deputy Director Duplanty.
Chair Peasley and members, thank you. Last motion passed, by the way. So thank you. In case the mic was off. All right. So this endorsement, if you pull up the document, retitles the endorsement instead of elementary foreign language endorsement, moves it into a more modern term of world language K-8. It's just as a side note, I mean, when I left the classroom in 2010, I mean, when I started in 95, we were already calling the foreign language department the world languages department. And so, I think most folks are already here. And so this is, and it's more inclusive of things that are represented by this endorsement, such as Native American language, which is not foreign. So it updates the title, and then I-1, again, updates the title. And again, like the other things that we recommended today already, removes optional, describes what it authorizes you to do, knowing that there's many ways to get to a place to be considered appropriately certified. And then under item 2A, again, adds the early child and middle grade certificates. And then under B, kind of removes what could be considered a barrier in trying to get your institution that you went to give you a letter of verification rather than looking at transcripts or looking at the exam. And so this does tie it to the exam that's aligned with the approved area rule for world languages. And again, that comes with, it's not articulated here, but the way rule is, it comes with that multitude of ways of waiving an exam, which opens the door to other opportunities, and then also clarifies if there isn't an exam in that world language, what the certification desk would be looking for, the 24 semester hours, or another foreign language approved by the board that's tied to statute, or like the native languages. I forget what that certificate's called, but I think it's native language certificate. And it ties that B3 is similar to that certificate. It allows the tribe to articulate that the person is qualified in that language. And then C is a little bit clearer, clarifying some language there as well.
Are there any other questions? Okay, no questions. And do I have a motion to recommend the proposed changes to Board Rule R72615I relating to elementary foreign language K-8 endorsement?
I so move. This is Ms. Weber.
Thank you, Member Weber. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Member Corporate, thank you so much. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Went off again. I'm sorry. So the motion was carried. The approval was unanimous. Thank you. Next item 8 is the summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas. Deputy Director Duplanty. Oh, I would like to make one comment before that refers back to the process. When we were having the discussion about the mathematics, do we need to have another clarifier in the descriptor for the mathematics type position? When we're having these discussions about the world language, especially, we go through these discussions and we ask these questions because it's important for the State Board of Education to understand the depth of questioning, the consideration that is given by all the members of this committee based on their experiences and based on the positions that they hold as the representative of stakeholder groups on this committee. And the State Board of Education over the past almost 2 decades has really come to respect the work of this committee because they know that we do as thorough a job as we can to take consideration from other perspectives, experiences from urban, suburban, and rural districts, we get the information and from the IHEs and the field so that we do a good job of understanding what the needs of the field are and how we can make certifications more accessible and remove barriers, but still hold standards. So I've said to our new members that although Kathy, I didn't get a chance to talk to you, I'm so glad to have you here on this committee. But that's why we go through these questions, and we want you to be able to think of and generate these questions and ask the committee as well. There is no uninformed questions here. We all have different understandings and perspectives, and we bring that here and we ask each other for their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Peasley. So on some feedback already in this meeting that I'm taking away, just so that you know that I heard it, was that we'll get you a copy of the rules. Probably we'll try to pare it down to the certification rules, and get you that in electronic format via email. And then I'll be reaching out for maybe feedback on the process, getting your thoughts on kind of the cognitive load we just put you through with a big presentation, and then each individual item. The next CAC meeting is scheduled for July 2nd at 9 a.m. I know that's an interesting week. I already have some quorum concerns, so I'm going to give a little time and then reach back out and see who's available. And Zoom is certainly a possibility, but I'll call it a little sooner rather than later. If it looks like we're not going to hit quorum because it's a holiday week, I'll call that, and then we'll just plan for August. So right now we're on the books for July 2nd at 9 a.m. The following meeting after that would be August 6th at 9 a.m. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. You've done a fine job on the first big full committee meeting, Deputy Director Duplanty, and as you have done so well, Deputy Associate Superintendent Wilbert, thank you very much. And to our two new members, thank you for coming and being here today and raising questions. Member Philpott, that was an important consideration. I'm glad to have you. You were here today for that endorsement. And for the good of the order, I think we're good. So we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at.
Chairman Peasley, I
Question.
signed on, well, not a question so much as I signed on a little bit late. We had a family emergency. Anyway, I was here for all the discussions. I'm not sure how that affects if we have a quorum, if I wasn't, but I was here from right after the welcome. Just so I did hear everything, and I did vote on all the items.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Member Tebow. I did see you pop up when you came on, when the video came on. And thank you very much. We did have quorum. We appreciate your voting on all the items.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, everybody. The meeting is adjourned at 10:33. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.